Well, hello everybody. Welcome to our Wednesday webinar. This is September 25th, 2019, and we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Happy fall. I didn't know it was fall because the weather's still in the upper 90s where I am, but I know it is fall, and that is exciting because pretty soon the weather will chill out a little bit, and I guess we also get that fall back time. I don't think that's till November though, but that's where we supposedly gain an hour of sleep. So you can tell what I'm focused on. I'm ready for fall and I'm ready for that extra hour. Um, we want to thank you for joining us. I am joined today with Paige and Jenny. We are all part of the training team here, and we are going to be introducing all of our new Eduphorians to everything Eduphoria in this very quick hour. So say hi, Paige and Jenny.
Hi,
Hi,
everybody.
Paige and Jenny.
Oh, goodness. Here we
Oh,
go.
Paige was wittier than me on that one.
That's good, though.
Was.
So we are taking questions, comments as you're viewing this live. There's a little questions box in your GoToWebinar menus there. If you have questions as we're presenting information, feel free to post those in there, as well as any comments. And we'll take compliments as well. Um, we can't hear you. This is a webinar where we can only interface with you through that questions box. So that's the only place that we'll be able to respond to whatever is needed as we're doing this presentation. So while I'm speaking, Paige and Jenny are monitoring that. And when they're presenting, we kind of rotate and we're able to get in there, view any of the questions that might pop up, any comments, and then it helps us determine if we need to cover something again or show something else that's tied in with the question. So make sure also that the questions that you're asking are tied to what we're talking about today and tied to the particular topics that we are on. Sometimes we get questions that are way out or not on the current topic, and it's hard for us to answer those when we have viewers here to see this specific webinar topic.
Not that we don't want to help you, but this may not be the appropriate venue. So you can always email us at training@eduphoria.net with questions that are not related to today's topics.
Correct.
Yes.
And if you have a specific issue or problem and maybe we don't answer, or what we say today doesn't solve your problem, you can email that to support@eduphoria.net or training@eduphoria.net. And that creates a ticket in our system, and then we can kind of help you solve your problem. So just a heads up on that. It's hard for us to, when someone says, I'm having this and it's real specific to the district, for us to address that in a webinar where we can address it in a ticket for sure.
Correct. So this is our agenda for today. We're going to welcome our Eduphorians, and then we're going to go through our support and training resources, all of our help resources, upcoming training opportunities, and then we're going to go through specific applications. We're going to go through system management, Strive, Forethought, and Aware. And so each of us has a specific realm that we're going to focus on during this. And so you'll hear from each of us as we're going through each item. So let's talk about Eduphorians. Eduphorians, by definition, are the people charged with setup, managing settings, and are also usually the point of contact for the district. So let me explain the point of contact. Sometimes a district may want to have all of their teachers and staff reach out to one person in the district for support before reaching out to a company. Other times, they may want to be copied on responses from the company to staff about how to do things. So usually an Eduphorian is that first line of contact for support before they reach out to our support team or the training team specifically. And so Eduphorians have a lot of responsibility because they're taking care of implementing our applications in the district and also being the point of contact for the district and also the point of contact for us to reach out to and share resources, training materials, upcoming events, where that information can also be shared by that Eduphorian with the rest of the district. So welcome, Eduphorians. And like Jenny and Paige were saying earlier about contacting us, so we have support and we have training. We have specific people in teams of the training team and the support teams, and we kind of cross-reference each other and work together. So like if support isn't sure how to answer questions, sometimes they'll forward it forward to someone on the training team who has experience using the products and may be able to provide a better answer. And sometimes us on the training team, we even will reach out to support and say, hey, can you help us look at this, because we're not sure either. But usually when you want to contact support is when blank isn't working right. Like you're using the application, maybe you're getting an error message pop up on the screen, maybe there's some slowness going on, maybe there's a button that's usually there but doesn't seem to be there, it's grayed out, you're not sure, it's just not working correctly. Then you want to reach out to support@eduphoria.net. Training is when the question is, I don't know how to blank. And that's where we can come in and provide you with answers and our own type of training support to help you get on the right track to figure out how to do a specific task. And so contacting either one of those will help resolve those issues and also make sure that that information is communicated with the Eduphorian. So very good. We also have online help. And so inside of all of the applications, there's a help button, and that will take you to the screen you see on this computer. I also have it pulled up here. And when you access online help, there is a search bar, and there are also categories below by specific application that you can drill into. But like an example would be if you were to search for something, if you were to type in what you're looking for. As you see me typing on the screen, it pops up suggestions, article suggestions to help you find a specific article that you might be interested in. And then you can click on that option to go to that specific article. And it's usually the articles are step by step with bullet points indicating each of the steps. The bold is usually indicating the button that you need to click on, with a corresponding illustration showing where to click. So just that's in our help. That's always available. That's free. Everyone has access to this. All of your users have access to this, and they're able to access this online help 24/7 to be able to get what they need. This is also where you can submit a request. And so submitting a request is putting in a support ticket. So it's similar to emailing support@eduphoria.net, but it's the actual form that you would complete. You would need to put in your email address, the subject, just like a brief line about what's going on, a description. So this is where you want to provide details. And let me explain what that means. As a former technology director in a district, the more details that you can provide, the easier it is for support to initially look at and help resolve the ticket. And what I mean by details is if you have a specific user or you're seeing something across multiple user types, it may be a good idea to put in there, look at this specific user at this specific campus so that they can go in and look in that role to see how the person is interacting on the screen, and then giving details of what's happening. Like I said, former tech director, we'd sometimes get tickets that would come into our tech support system that would be computer is broken. And there's not much I could do with that on the first look. I would need to know a little bit more. I always think of it like CSI. What you put in a ticket is kind of like helping the people who are going in to investigate the crime have all the details so that they can help resolve it easier than just walking in a room and there's a chalk outline and that's it. So whatever description you can put in would help. And then it's also selecting the category. This helps sort it to the right person who can help. So selecting if it's a forethought issue, that it needs to go forethought versus any of the other options that are available. And if you're not sure, there is one here that's just called like other technical. And so that will sort to general support category. You can also attach screenshots. We've had some people be very creative and create like a screencast video demonstrating, and that is also very helpful as well. So once you have this information ready, then you'll click the submit button. When you enter your email address, that means you'll be notified by email of any changes to the ticket, any responses to the ticket as well. And then you'll be able to get that information as you're going through and waiting for responses from support or training. And this is also how you can submit a training request as well, because when you are in here, it may go to support and they're going to read the description, and if it's something training, they'll send it over to us, and so we'll get those. It doesn't all just sit in support or wait for support. We're very good about reading these things and responding in a very, very quick amount of time. Even if it's something that may take a little bit more time, you will get a response letting you know what's happening next with that ticket. And so it's a pretty good turnaround on getting tickets resolved, but also communicated about where things are in the process. So I just did this one, which was available help. So all of our help, the click help button is in every application. It's also on the main screen. So when you first go into Eduphoria, there's a help button here at the very top. It's searchable. You can drill down through the various categories. And then we showed how to enter in that little support ticket. Oh, going the wrong way. There we go. So I'm going to talk about Eduphoria management and keyed in specifically to roles and rights and just basic district settings, and also making sure that your calendars are set up. So management is the application that's here. So if you're an Eduphorian, you will need access to management. And the way that you would get this access is in the manage users. Someone would have to give you that access first. If you're the Eduphorian and you don't have access, and you should, if you do not have that access yet for your district, you may want to reach out to support to have someone there click that on for you. And manage users, you can select specific users. You can type in the first name or last name and click the magnifying glass to find users. But whenever you have a user, you can actually click on their name to see some basic information. But the roles and rights tab are where you define what type of access they have in the system. And both Paige and Jenny are going to be explaining a little bit more about roles and rights for their specific applications. But roles, you have to think of roles as like a container of individual rights. And so when you select by role, it's automatically assigning specific rights tied to that particular application. So for system management access, someone in your district needs the system administrator role that gives them access to the management application to where they can go in and manage the users and also the settings. So inside the applications, this is where you define who has what type of access. When you are seeing some of the categories like this data administrator, this would be for district-wide. So if I click that, it would apply district-wide. When it has a plus button next to it, this is where you can select one or multiple campuses where you may want to restrict access for that particular role. And so you can actually define access at some campuses, or a checkbox indicates that that role is active for someone at all the campuses. Our preference as trainers and as former users in districts is that you use roles instead of individual rights, because it's hard to track if you're sharing multiple roles across campuses, that means you're going to have to keep your own tracking of individual rights that you might assign. If you are doing it by role, it's a lot easier, again, because the role is the container for the individual rights. But we keep the tab open just in case you want to assign specific rights to a role. Some other features in here, if you're needing help, is you can actually print a role report, and you would do this by application. And what it will do is it creates a CSV file that you can open in a spreadsheet, and it's going to show, according to whichever application, who in your district has which roles assigned. So like for form space, it's going to put the header form space administrator and then list anybody in your district who has that checked off to indicate that they're the form space administrator, and on down through school administrator, public web, and of course denied access, which is a strange role, but it's there. But it will show you who has what access to it. If you're new to the district and you're not sure who should have access or what those access rights should be, this is a great way to start, because if your previous Eduphorian had already set up roles and rights, then this is a great way to start to find out who has access to what. And then if you need to, you can like check with another principal. So if this person was a principal and I wanted to check another principal to make sure that their roles connected to the same way another one, I would want to make sure that I had the roles and rights report so I could verify that those people have the same access, because in the district they have the same job responsibility. So that's going to be in the manage users area. And again, when you manage users, there's several tabs here. The main ones being the general tab that gives you the basic information for the person and the campus that is selected for them if they have gone into their own profile, or in the case of my demo, it's synchronized with Active Directory, where some of the information may not be editable because it's managed by Active Directory. This is also where you can view the roles, that the profile that the person has. If they're a teacher, if they are going to be a principal, you can view that information here. And then also in their profile, if they've selected the subjects they'll be teaching, grade levels taught, and the bilingual status. So just basic information in here for setup and for managing the roles and rights. Another thing to look at is the managed schools. This is where you'll create your various campuses and also your departments. And so when you create a new school, you just enter in the name for that school. Click next. Finish. And it's going to create that campus over here for me. And then once I select that campus, I can select whether it is a school or a department. If it's a school, if you're adding more schools, of course you want to reach out to us, because we have to make sure you have enough licenses to cover all of your schools. If it's a department, you do not have licenses attached to it, and you just verify that it is a department and that it's part of the structure for how you're going to group users in the system. So in this case, if I have a department, if I have a transportation department, for example, I can group all the staff who are working in the transportation department into this one building. They can actually select that in their profile to indicate they work for transportation, and it adds them to that group. And then school calendars. This is important because this is where you set up the instructional calendar for the year as well as your reporting calendar. The instructional calendar is definitely needed, especially now. Here we are in the end of September. This is important if you have teachers saying, I'm going into forethought to create lessons and it's not working. It usually means that there's not an instructional calendar for the year. So it's a good way to start the year, is to have that calendar ready so that they're able to get in there and access lesson plans tied to instructional days. So creating a is built, what I used to do in my district is I would by the admin, and I would go in by the days and I would mark specific days to say this day might be a student holiday or it's a student and staff holiday, and click update day information. And what that does is it removes that from being an available lesson plan day, but it also helps you keep your calculation of days when you're creating your reporting calendar. And the reporting calendar is going to be how you create the maybe I'm thinking Jenny might be able to help more with this, but it's actually tied in with Aware and tied in with the test options that are available in Aware for setting dates for testing. Am I correct, Jenny, on that? Is that Jenny's muted?
Sorry.
Yes, it is. Okay.
Thank you, Paige.
Yeah, thank you, Paige. Go ahead. What were you going to say? Because to my knowledge, it won't say like only available during these terms or those terms. You can set
Right.
your administration date for whenever. It will, however, lock you out of the ability or lock teachers out of the ability to build a test when they're outside of a regular term. So
Yeah, and the way I used to use it was I would put in my first 6 weeks, second 6 weeks, third, all the way down. I would put in the start date and the end date so that it kept the grading cycle
right,
inside the instructional calendar, because I think that information was helpful for the teachers also with their lesson planning to be able to see that information as part of that calendar.
right, and setting it up for when rosters roll for the new semester. So
Correct.
it's assigned to them. So yeah.
Yeah. And I have on here my 1920. It's from a demo. I don't recommend you make next year's calendar until you are until that calendar is approved by your district. Usually those are done each spring.
That's this year,
So
Joel.
what's that? I'm sorry.
1920 is this year.
Oh my goodness. I'm still waiting for fall.
Oh my gosh, where have you been the last 3 months? Okay.
Oh, is it 2012 still? No. Anyway, if you have a calendar that's 2021, for example, that's probably not a good idea, because again, you don't want to have a calendar out there that's not ready and tied to the dates that are set by your calendar committee or by your central office. So I would usually wait to do that until in the summer to create those. But this is where you would create your school calendars that are available in the system management. Are there any questions that have popped up or anything I can review from the team?
We have some questions that I've asked people to send us emails about, because they're a little either more involved or more specific than we have time for in today's webinar with all that we have to cover.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right, Paige.
So it's me. Are you going to
hand off?
You're turning over to me?
Yes.
Thank you. So I never saw, there we go. I never saw my pop-up button.
Well, give me a sec.
Okay. Come on, get with it. Okay, so we're going to talk about Strive setup just a little bit, and I want to talk about roles and rights in Strive as well. Joel talked about some of the specific things that you're going to look at there. That's not the right window. Maybe this is the window I want, and it's not. So that's not, I'm in trouble. Okay, so I had a glitch a little while ago, and apparently I lost all of my things that I had open. So let me open something real quickly and see if I can show a screen. I want to talk about some specific things that you need to know the difference between when we go into the roles and rights. And I want to talk about principals and assistant principals first of all. So I'm going to go into Strive and open. I didn't mean to go into Strive. I meant to go into management because I'm talking about roles and rights. Sorry, that just threw me totally off my game. So if I go back to management, and I look at a specific user, and I'm going to go in and look at a principal. So I'm going to go to Manage Users and find one of my principals in here. When I go and look at the roles, there are a couple things on this screen that I want to talk about. First of all, the default for everybody is just the teacher role. So if you are setting somebody who's not a teacher, you'll have to come in here to the roles to set them up. And as Joel was saying, you know, our first recommendation is use the roles only and don't use the rights tab unless you have to do something above and beyond what the normal role does. Because if you start messing with the rights tab, it's really hard to tell who has what. You can't see, well, one principal has this plus that, one principal only has this. It's hard to tell. One thing that you can do if things get where not everybody is consistent anymore is you have these two buttons up here at the top right. One says clear all security, and I'm going to do that on my principal right here, and I'm going to clear it all out. And so they're back to the nothing but a teacher role right now. So nothing is checked under roles except for teacher. This is a great way to clean them up, or if people change jobs, to get those roles and rights out of there. So I just cleared out everything. And then I can go and say I want to assign the principal roles, and I'm going to click there, and it's going to check. I said okay. There we go. It's going to check all of those roles back that belong to the principal. The one thing that you need to be aware of when you do that is that in the profile, principals and assistant principals are together in one job description. So when you choose this principal roles, it's going to set them to be the school department appraiser. If they're the building principal, that's fine. But if they're the assistant principal, I want to uncheck that one and check school department limited appraiser instead of school department appraiser. This one, school department appraiser, should be for building principals only, and the assistant principals should be the limited appraisers. Limited appraisers can only see appraisals on the users that they select. Building principals can see appraisals on anyone in their building or anyone in their department if they're a department head. So that's an important role that needs to be addressed, the difference between principals and assistant principals in terms of Strive. Because if I'm an assistant principal and I have this school department appraiser right, role, I can see all the other assistant principals appraisals, and that's not good. So I want to make sure that APs are the limited and principals are the school department appraiser. Other than that, this button is going to assign everything that the principals need. I just want to make sure I make that one change with the limited. Okay, so once I have my roles set up the way I want to have them, and everybody who needs to be able to do an appraisal can. Let me back up for a second. Some people may need to do appraisals that are not principals. So I may have someone who's an instructional coach, and they may need to be able to see walkthroughs. We do have a walkthrough viewer role, so you can check that. I don't need to check it for a principal or an AP. They can automatically do that. But if I wanted someone else on the campus to do it, I want to be able to check that off. We also have the ability for someone to be a school walkthrough appraiser. So you can have your instructional coaches or department heads be able to do walkthroughs if you want to give them that role. So we have those abilities. Any of the ones that have a plus sign beside them means that I can check it and I can say, at which campuses can I be a school walkthrough appraiser? And it should default to the one campus that they have selected in their profile. And it's best to only have one thing checked in the profile. Their primary location should be where they are set in their profile. That's going to give them the right information when they come in here to assign roles, because they'll only have that one thing. So you can set everybody to have whatever roles and rights they need, and then when you go into Strive, things are going to work the way that you want them to. I did want to mention, Joel talked about the help section, and there is under system management in our help section a document that's a spreadsheet that lists out all of the roles that exist in each of the applications and what rights are assigned to that role, so that you can look through and say, I need somebody to be able to do this one thing. This is the role I should have to give them in order for them to be able to do everything they need to do in their job. So that spreadsheet, I think, is very helpful when you're trying to figure out if your roles are set up correctly. And again, sometimes in terms of troubleshooting, when things aren't working correctly, if you can go in and clear out all security and then reassign the roles, sometimes that will get your problem solved because there's some right checked somewhere that you haven't found. Okay, I want to talk about appraisal types just a little, or appraisee types just a little bit. So when you go in to Strive, if you are the Eduphorian, you will have a settings button over here, and I can go into my appraisal settings to do that back end setup. And a couple of things that you need to be thinking about are the appraisee types that you have. I'll just say right now, this is my demo site, and that's too many in terms of appraisee types. I don't want to put too many appraisee types in there because I can't delete them out if I change my mind later on. So I want to be really sure that I need an appraisee type before I create one. One of the reasons that we sometimes get too many appraisee types is that people think of them in terms of job descriptions. So I have to have a new appraisee type for every job description, but that's not exactly true. The appraisee type is more about the process that they undergo rather than their job description. So for example, teachers all have the same job description, but some of them get the full T-test process, and some of them get that waiver process where they don't have to have the formal observation step. Same job description, but it requires two different appraisee types because they have two different processes. On the other hand, I might have librarians who get a once and done evaluation, plus I might also have diagnosticians, counselors, school nurses, paraprofessionals. They all get a once and done evaluation process. So if they just have that one step in their process, they can all be put together in an appraisee type, and I have one set up called campus staff. And so I set up my campus staff process with one step. They have the evaluation and that's it. But when you go and look at their evaluation choices, the principal will choose, is this my trainer? Is this my counselor? So multiple documents, a document to match every job type or job description can go into this appraisee type. But what distinguishes this type from other types is the process itself. How many steps does that process have? And if they all follow the same number of steps, the same process, then they can all be in one group. And that's going to keep you from having all these in the list that we may or may not be using anymore. And when we're not using them, usually we have to put a Z at the beginning or the word old at the end, and then that just kind of makes it a little junky. So try to be as specific as you can when you're setting those up. The evaluation process itself is comprised of two parts. You can have steps, which look like this. They're going to be the blocks, and I would come up here and say I want to add a new step if I want to put another one in there. And then I'll have my tasks underneath each step. Those correspond to, and I'm going to go in and look at a teacher here in my campus view. If my campus view will open for me, there we go. Let me just go into this one here. So when I go in and look at a teacher's process, the steps are going to be the headings, and they're going to be gold bars across the top of the screen. So this is when I set up a step, that's all I'm doing is putting this up at the top, saying I'm dividing it into chunks. So I have a goal setting chunk, and then I have a student growth chunk and a walkthrough chunk. And within each of those steps, I can set up specific tasks that they have to do. They have to write a professional goal. They have to do a self-reflection. Those are the two tasks in that goal setting step. I have 3 tasks in my student growth step. So when you set up those pieces in the evaluation process, this is what it translates to, telling the teachers exactly what they have to do. And if right now I'm logged in as an administrator, so I see my plus signs on the things that the appraiser would do. But if I was logged in as a teacher, I would see a plus sign for each one of those tasks that I have to do. So again, we're making an outline for them of exactly what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and what they're responsible for creating themselves. Did we have a question that we needed to talk about? Okay, I thought I heard.
Nothing.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay. Thank you. So when you go in to create your process, just remember that the ones with the blue blocks are going to be those gold bars, and then the tasks are going to be the items in there. And then once you set something up, so I'm going to say this self-reflection is something my teachers have to do. I'm going to tie it to a document. So I'm going to choose document as the task type. I'm going to look in my reflections folder, and I'm going to find the document that I want to use, and I'm going to make sure that it's checked. For my professional goal and my student growth goal, rather than using a static document, I want to use the dynamic task type of professional goal or student growth goal that allows me to interact with my appraiser and also collect evidence, tie it to an aware portfolio, tie it to professional development that I've taken. So I want it to be that interactive. I will use the professional goal feature or the student growth goal feature. But for something that doesn't have that option of being interactive, I would go through and find for walkthroughs which documents are my administrators going to be able to use when they do walkthroughs. I would check those off so my administrators can use any of those 3 in my demo site. Those are their choices. And once I've selected them, then I can update them if need be. In setting up that process, if you can put a date, especially on the things that the teachers have to do, I think that's very helpful to them to be able to see what's their deadline for getting their professional goal done, what's their deadline for getting their student growth goal done. So you can put a due date on those items each year. You have to update those each year, obviously. Walkthroughs and observations, it's difficult to put a date on them because they can be done throughout the year. Observations, you may have a window for observations, but because the pre and post conference are tied to a specific number of days before and after, if you put that end date on there, then it's going to be a little misleading to the teachers in terms of when their post observation conference has to be done. So I would not really recommend putting dates on those. But for your end of year conference, you could put a date when their goal reflections have to be done, because that's something the teachers will do. And you could also put the end date, all summatives will be done by, so it's due by a specific date. You could do that if you wanted to. The walkthroughs and observations are a little more difficult to pin down to specific dates. So let's talk about templates for just a minute. When you click on a task, and I'm going to assign a document to it, I will go into the folder, and I have all of these choices that I can pick which document I want to use. Those choices come from whatever you have over here in your evaluation templates. So you can come over here and look at, in your system, these are the reflections I have in my demo site, and I can choose from any of those reflection documents. These are the walkthroughs that I have, and I can choose from any of those. Same for observations and evaluations. At the end of each year, we recommend that you look at your templates and kind of have that conversation about whether they're meeting your needs. Is that what you want? I can go in and click on a walkthrough and find one and preview it so that I can see exactly what is being used, and we can talk about, does this give us the data that we want? Is this exactly the document that we want to be using? If I think something needs to be changed, I can edit it. So I can go over to Edit Template, and I can open up any of my questions, go into the columns or the rows, and then I can change the verbiage, or I can change whatever I want to about that template. If I just want to start over from scratch, I can create a new template. And when I create a new template, let's say this is a walkthrough, and so I'm going to say it's a classroom walkthrough and click next. Then I get the choice of either creating one from scratch or copying an existing one. And so I can copy one that's sort of like what I want, but there's enough changes that I want to make a new copy and adapt it from there. Once I make the copy, I can make any changes that I want to that document. The other thing that you can do when you're looking for documents or making changes is go out and look in our Eduphoria community. And so when you go there, my recommendation is always to hit the update refresh button first, because it's going to pull out anything that's been added since the last time you were here. Usually the longer it takes to refresh, the longer it's been since you've been there. But I was there just yesterday, so I'm not sure why it's taken so long in my site. But once I get there, I'll see those same folders, maybe not in the same order: evaluation, intervention, observation, reflections, summative, and walkthroughs. And so you can go look in any of those folders and see what's out there, what's available to you that you could use. Okay, so I'm going to go in again. So I would go into the walkthrough folder and see what's out there as samples. Some of these come from different districts, so I could click on that and see up at the top, it's going to preview the template for me, and then up at the top, it's going to show me what district it came from. Well, this is painfully slow. I've been having internet troubles today, so I apologize for that.
Yeah, and I think I was going to say too, I just got a text from Jenny. We lost her.
Okay.
I'm back.
Nope.
I'm
She's
back.
back.
I got
Hey, she's back.
Yeah,
Yay!
I did. I totally lost my network connection for a minute. So.
Well, I lost everything else but my network connection right before Joel turned it over to me. So,
Nice.
yeah, so that was fun.
We are pros. We are pros, let me tell you.
We love technology just as much as everybody else.
Absolutely. So anyway, when you're in the community, what you should be seeing is, I'm going to get out of here and go back.
You're going to go back to Firefox, your favorite.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, there's
okay.
all your tabs.
Yeah, I don't know how I lost them a while ago, and now there they are, but
Magic.
some more weirdness. When you go into the community and you find one that you like and you think it's something that you could use, or maybe it needs minor changes, but it's faster than starting from scratch, all you have to do is open up that template, preview it. So I'm going to go into the community.
Don't refresh again.
I'm not gonna. And I would go into the walkthrough folder and I would say, maybe this is the one that I want to use now. We added this middle column. I should say Joel added this middle column because we had some, first we started out with one column and it just said observed. And then when people accidentally checked observed, they couldn't uncheck it. So we added the NA column, which gives you a way to uncheck one that's not the one you meant. But just checking observed, you can't tell whether it was in a positive way or a negative way. So now we have they observed it as written, or they observed the negative version of it and it needs to be addressed. So if you wanted to add that third column into yours, all you would have to do is click on import template, and that's going to bring it into your system where you can tweak it if you want to, or go in and assign it to one of your evaluation processes. The last thing I want to say about templates is that they need to be tagged to the dimensions. So if I go into one of my walkthroughs that I'm using, I would want to make sure that it's set to the correct framework, T-TESS or TPESS, and then I want to go into the template itself, and I want to go to the rows if it's a matrix column, or to the check boxes, or to the comment boxes, whatever type of question it is. And I want to make sure that for each one that it says specifically what dimension it is. If it just says dimension and it doesn't have the number, then it's not tagged. And so I would want to double click on it to get it up here in the edit box. And then I would want to select the correct tag from down here. And then I would want to update that row so that each one of them says specifically which dimension it's tagged to. And that can happen, like I said, for, let's see if we have any that have comment boxes. Yeah, if I wanted comments to be tied to those specific dimensions, I can do that with comment boxes as well, or with check boxes. So you want to have whatever question type it is tagged. That's going to allow the data to show up on the summative panel and also in your appraisal analysis. So if your templates are not tagged to the dimensions, if your documents are not tagged, you are not going to get out of the system everything that you can. You won't be able to see all of the data. The last thing that I wanted to just mention before we move on to the next application is under general options. If you want to use electronic signatures, there's actually 3 places that you have to turn it on. You have to turn it on in the management application, and that turns it on for your whole system. Then you have to go into each application, so I would have to go into Strive and turn on enable signatures for this application, and then I would have to go into the template that I wanted to apply it to. So I'm going to say only my observations have to be signed, and I would go to my template options and I would turn on or enable electronic signatures for that particular document. So you can have it turned on in Strive. That doesn't mean every document has to be signed. Only the ones that you turn it on for will have to be signed. So the electronic signatures have to happen in 3 places. Okay, I'm going to jump to Forethought and talk about the setup there, which will be faster and hopefully not as hiccupy because my system might be up and running now. I want to talk about, yeah, I do want to talk about roles and rights just for a second. There's really only one thing. If you are a teacher, then you automatically have a lesson planner and nothing has to happen to the teachers for them to be able to use Forethought. But if you are something other than a teacher, I'll go in and find one of my people. This is This is an instructional coach. And when I go and look at her roles, in addition to in Forethought being a teacher, she might need to have the lesson plan viewer role. And that way she can see the lesson plans of other teachers on the campus. Principals, they will have the principal role. They don't need lesson plan viewer also because that's included in their role. But if you have someone who's not a principal and doesn't have that role, but they need to be able to see the lesson plans, you can give them that role as well. That's really the only role that's going to be impacted or that will impact your use of Forethought. Everything else will be done in the application through delegates. So I'm going to go into Forethought and talk about the options. As a manager, on the Manage tab, you're going to have Forethought options where you will go in and put in the district template that you want to use. So what is it that's going to show up for every teacher? What's going to be the prompts that they will see to help them write the lesson plans that you want them to write? Usually the district has to work a little bit to get it down to a single template for everybody. There's usually some thought that elementary templates need to be different from secondary, but if you think about it, everybody at every grade will have a content objective. That objective will look very different at elementary and secondary, but they'll all have one, so you can put that in as a prompt. The same is true for some sort of, whether you call it an engagement activity or a do now or a bell ringer or a warm up, they're going to have some sort of thing that will get them excited at the beginning of the lesson. It'll again look very different in different subjects, but everybody will have one. Everybody will have some sort of process or steps or activities list or whatever the body of that lesson. This particular example is using the 5E model, so it has engage, explain, explore, and elaborate. The reason that evaluate is not in the template is that they are doing that part through checklists. So you can set up your template however you want to, but this is where that template goes. This is what sets what's going to show up on the teacher's planners. And then I mentioned that in this template, the evaluate piece is done through checklists. So you can also go over to this tab and set up whatever checklists you want to. There's one here called assessment. And this is where that evaluation piece is. And it has a list of things that the teachers can check off. What kind of evaluation are they doing in today's lesson? Is it a ticket out the door? Is it thumbs up, thumbs down? Or is it an actual quiz or test? So this is what they would be able to check off to meet that evaluation E in their lesson plan process. It's easy to set these up. You just write your categories, and then for each category, you will put the items that you want them to be able to choose from down at the bottom. You can do all of that planning and get them all ready to go, and nobody can see them until you check that little box that says enable lesson checklist. And as soon as that happens, then the teachers will be able to see them. I'm going to go into a teacher in Forethought just to show you two things. Open, open, open. So this is a teacher who is brand new and has not ever set up their schedule. This is what the teachers will do at the beginning of the year. And I'm just going to go in and say, I'm going to put a name on there. I'll just put her initials. The only thing that matters really on the name is this is just a helpful hint, it's not going to impact the way it works, but I recommend that you don't put a year on the name of your schedule. Teachers are always thinking in terms of school years, but we need to make sure we don't do that, so you're not tempted to make a new one each year, because you want one that's forever. I'm going to go in and grab just the first course that I can find to show you what the checklists look like.
Okay,
And
Paige, we do
Mhm.
have a question, and I actually
Okay.
don't know the answer to it, so I'm going to let you because it's a good one.
Okay.
So in the checklist categories, are these defaulted or can you build them from scratch?
You have to build them from scratch. There's no default. The
Okay,
ones that you just saw were ones that I made up and put in my demo site.
perfect.
But you make up your own. They can be anything you want them to be.
Okay,
And the way they show up is here in the lesson planner. In my little gray box for each course, it's going to say click here to
yeah,
select checklist items, and
yeah,
there are those checklists that I created. And these are the ones that I put
okay,
in. You put in whatever you want,
perfect. Okay, so
so you're not stuck.
there
Yeah, you're
aren't
not.
unless you add them.
No,
Perfect.
you're not stuck with any of mine. You can put in whatever you want.
Okay,
And so
thank
I
you.
would just go in and check off the few things that I'm using today, and then when I close it, it's going to close that down except for the things that I checked. So it's
Yeah,
putting a lot of information into the lesson plan with just a few
it is.
clicks.
Mm-hmm.
The big question that we get most often is, I have my schedule here, then I made a change, and when I go back and look at my lesson planner, the new course I added is not there. The way Forethought works is that when you click on any date and it gets bolded over here in your calendar, it stamps that day with the template and your schedule. So it's going to show you your courses and your template. If you make any changes after that, that page has already been stamped. So think of it like an actual piece of paper. When you put the stamp on there, I've got to get that stamp off in order to stamp it with my new schedule. To get it off, I'm going to go up to the top and say delete today's plans. I know that's a scary button for teachers, but if you look right here, there's not a plan here, so I'm not really losing anything. But if I click delete today's plans, it would take off the template that's wrong, and it would put on the new template after whatever changes I had made. So that's a question that you will get frequently. Teachers will say, I've made my changes and I had 3 days that were right, now I have a day that's wrong. It was because they had clicked on that date and stamped it before they made that change. The last thing that I want to talk about is managing standards. So I'm going to go back to the Manage tab, and if you go into Learning Standards and you go into any of your courses, once you get a tree from us, any changes to standards have to be managed at the district level. So if you have, like I still have the 910 TEKS in here for English 1, I would need to go out to the options, find the new TEKS and bring them in myself at the district level, and I really have already done it. They're down here. But then I would want to delete out the old standards. So I'm going to cut them and I'm going to paste them in my trash can. This is just the fastest way. If I paste them in the trash can, then when I go back to English 1, the old standards will be gone. This is something that has to be managed at the district level. We cannot push that out. The only way we can push it out is to give you a whole new tree, and that causes some problems. So something you would want to do, be thoughtful about. If you do have the TEKS resource system folders and you updated the TEKS, these are still going to use the same standards that you had in the past. So these might be last year's TEKS, even though you brought in the new folder. You will have to edit not only the big folder of TEKS, but also the folders that are broken out by unit. Any changes to standards has to be managed at the district level. So I know we get tickets sometimes saying we haven't pushed it out yet. We can't push it out. It's not an option. So that's something that has to be managed by people at the district level.
Paige, do you want to explain why you don't just delete them?
Well,
why you paste them to trash?
you can delete them, but you have to go into the folder and hold down the command key and click on each one individually. You can't do a click at the top and click at the bottom and select all. And then you have to delete those and then go back in and delete the folder. So it's like way more steps and way more time consuming if you delete the individual teaks. So if you delete the folders by cutting them and pasting them, then that's going to be your fastest way to do it. I would
just
also
another note on that, Eduphoria is hiring somebody to help rebuild the curriculum manager piece and forethought piece. We have the job posted on our site. It needs to be somebody from a district who has curriculum experience. So just put the plug in there.
so
we are hiring. Great.
And I would also go in and delete these folders and start over, because to me it's easier to start over with the folders than it is to go in and take them all out individually and add them back in. Again, I think it's faster just to delete the folders and make new ones, but that's one of the things that I would do. And then once you have like a lot of stuff in your trash, and right now I don't, but you may notice that things start to slow down, like load slowly. If you go in and you have to scroll through your trash, that may be one of the contributing factors. So you can come here and discard your trash down in the bottom right-hand corner. You never want to publish when you're in your trash folder, but you can discard. And when I discard, everything that's been thrown in there since my last publish is going to disappear. That cleaning up will kind of help things from getting bogged down a little bit. I know that was a really fast thing about updating standards, but there is a great article in our help section. And if you go into forethought,
there's a lot of great articles.
Great articles in here, yes, but there's one called Updating the Curriculum Standards that has a video that walks you through it, and it has all your screenshots and everything. And we try to keep updates up at the top about what should be updated this year, what's coming in the next year, so that you can see that. But here's the video tutorial that you can watch. And then if you have questions after that, you can always email us. Okay, Jenny, I'm sorry, I was long-winded. Go.
Okay, am I presenting?
I'm gonna give it to you. Oh wait, I think I am.
I'll do that for. I'll do that.
Thank you.
Jenny, I just sent it over to you. There'll be a pop-up.
Okay, perfect. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about are aware roles and rights. We want to always kind of consider those because they impact who can view student data, which is important. Oops, I just went back to the wrong one. Let me go to manage. So when you look at aware roles and rights, again, if you're talking about a teacher, then teachers are automatically seen as a teacher, and when their roster shows up, they will have the standard teacher roles and rights. They'll be able to see their students data, anybody rostered to them, and they'll be able to build a teacher assessment, convert it to a team test. Anything a teacher might need to do is defaulted in the system. So you won't need to add additional things to a teacher unless the teacher is in a really specific circumstance. So I actually had a question early on, and it was, what do we do for special education teachers? Well, it depends. If a special education teacher is rostered their students, you really don't have to do anything in addition to that. If they are not rostered their students, but need to view their students' individual student data, you would give them this limited student data viewer role. And this would also work for dyslexia people, ESL people, anybody who floats. A lot of times that's an aide or a teacher, again, who is not rostered students. You give them the limited student data viewer role, and they create a monitor list. A monitor list should be approved at the campus level, and then it also needs to be deleted at the end of the year. As long as monitor lists are active, students on the list, the person who created that list can see those students. So if they create that at the elementary and it's an elementary aid and those kids are now in high school, they can still see their data. So monitor lists need to be managed and cleaned up. We can talk about how to do that, but that is how you would address people who need to see data but aren't rostered students. That said, when someone with a limited student data viewer logs in, all they have is the students tab. So the only thing they can do is go to an individual student profile. They cannot see summary data for like all the students in that monitor list. So just kind of know that. Principal is what you would give to your campus principals, also maybe some instructional coaches, also assistant principals. Principal is the data viewer role for a campus, and so this is who can see all of the data. That is oftentimes combined with campus administrator. So campus administrator allows them to create a campus level assessment and do some management things at the campus level. Manage student forms, those kind of things at the campus level. Anybody who needs to create district level assessments or see data at the district level, a data administrator would allow you to create district level assessments, and district data viewer allows you to see data at the district level, so all students in the district. So there are other roles here that are kind of smaller, like if you have somebody who may be printing assessments for you, but that's all they need to do, that's what they would get. Is this, they're not going to create the assessment, they're just going to print the test booklets. That would be that person. Somebody who's editing forms at the campus level, that would be this person. This is somebody who's going to create student forms at the district level, but they're not going to see data or create assessments. And this is somebody who might be managing the item bank, but again, not doing other things. So some of these down here, again, if you have one of these other roles, you're already going to get the rights that go to these other ones. So there's only a couple of rights that are often added, and they are analyzed grade level and analyzed subject. So if a teacher is, say, the science head or department head, they may get analyzed subject, and it will allow them to analyze all grade levels, for the subject of science. So if the science department head, they're going to get all students rostered to science, which essentially is all students on the campus, or every student who's rostered to a science class, but they're going to be able to analyze science assessments. So biology, chemistry, physics, whatever at the high school. Analyze grade level allows you to analyze all students on the grade level. So like a grade level, like the fourth grade, lead teacher, the fourth grade department head, that person may get analyzed grade level so that they can analyze students on the whole grade level. The only other one you might add would be to edit student test scores. If you don't import a SIRS file, what this would allow you to do is go into an individual student's profile and add star scores from like a previous district. You can order the SIRS file though, and if you order the SIRS file, you're going to get on the student profile like the question breakdown. So what questions they got right and wrong, all of that. If you just do this option and enter those scores, then all you get is the score for the student. So you don't really get any data besides the score. Those will not, if you add student scores from a student who moved into the district, those are never added to your summary data, but they are available on the students tab on the individual student profile. All right, so I kind of created a list of things this was generated by things that I struggled with when I was a new Eduphorian, and then also tickets that we've been seeing coming in. One of the big things we're seeing is I don't have any questions for, or I can't find questions for. And I think it's kind of a 3 or 4-fold problem, actually. So when I go into the new assessment builder, get one open. So this is a 7th grade math test. And I go in and I say search item bank. And even if I select all standards, people say, well, I don't have any questions. Well, the first thing you want to check is, have you updated your learning standards? And that's what Paige was showing you in the forethought. You have to manage your curriculum. The questions in our item banks, in some item banks, all of the questions have been updated to the new learning standards. And in other item banks, some, but not all, have been updated. At any rate, you want to be pulling questions from the new standards. So a quick way to kind of check to see if that's done is when your teacher goes to search item bank, one of the common things we're seeing is that you have old and new added. On this test, I have 7th and 8th grade teachers, but you have the old in there and the new, and so they're going back to the old to search for questions, either by habit or familiarity or whatever. They're clicking on the old SEs, or they might not even know they have new SEs, whoever created the test. And so you want to make sure they're clicking on the new learning standards for their subject and grade level. The other thing is that not in math, but in ELA, science, and social studies, questions are often buried under the resources tab instead of the questions tab. We did find out from TEK's resource system this past week that almost all of the Unit 2 questions for 2 through 8 ELA are under the resources tab, not the questions tab. So always have your teachers, if you are a science, social studies, or ELA teacher, look in the questions tab, but also check under the resources tab, because there are questions in the resources tab, that are tied to a resources under the resources tab that they're not going to see in the questions tab. So that's kind of a troubleshooting thing. The other thing that has thrown people off is some of the way items are tagged, like for TEK's resource system, has changed. So in the past, when you would search, you would say unit space 1. Well, now that is actually unit 01 is the way they've tagged those questions. So instead of saying unit space 1, it's unit 01 or unit 02. And so that's kind of throwing people off. Just know that's the case. The other thing we're also recommending is that when you're looking for star released items, filter to the star released item bank and then put in the year. So, there won't be a 2013 for math. Let's do 2016. So star released item bank, again, you can just put in the year. So I will tell you this, if the question itself has check your item tags here, because if a question itself has 2016 in the question, it will pull that question because it's content of the question. So kind of think about that when you're pulling questions. But generally speaking, the items are in there. There are, if you absolutely cannot find items, something's just not working right, that's when you submit a ticket. I think what's happening though, again, like I said, it's a 3 or 4-fold problem. It's all the new standards. You've got new ELA standards in a lot of grades, new social studies standards in a lot of grades. Science is all updated now. And so you have districts who are trying to pull based on old standards. And then also it's the new software, it's new tags, and it's knowing to go either to the questions tab or the resources tab. Another thing that we commonly see is a teacher says, I can't pull up any star released questions. I don't know where they are. I don't know why, I can't see any of the star released questions. If you are in a district that is small and your teachers are building all of their own assessments and nobody at central office builds assessments, there's no department heads building assessments, always go and make sure that your default security is set right. So if you click on this item bank tab, you can go down here, click on approved questions, then default security, and go across and make sure the right people have access to the right item banks. So like this star released, when we released it a couple of years ago, it defaulted to available for district level assessments only. I cannot tell you how many times I've been training in a district and they don't even know that their teachers can't see that. They just assume the teachers can see those questions. So the teachers have still been importing the key, and building them that way and going to TEA site and downloading the booklet. But administration doesn't even know they need to change this setting. So that's one thing to always double check. Make sure, again, that it's set up for campus or teachers, campus level personnel or teachers to see the items in the item bank. Do we have any questions so far?
We had one back on settings I meant to ask you about, and it was the question of what role do you recommend to create district level assessments?
That would be the district. You could do it 2 ways. You could do campus administrator and give them access to those campuses, and those would actually go in as campus level assessments, but it's the district data admin that can create district level assessments. that answer the question?
I believe that does. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so the next big one we see is I can't find my test. As much as I hate to say this, Eduphoria isn't perfect. Aware isn't perfect. And there are times, I will tell you, we're not seeing it as often as we used to. But there are times where somebody creates a test and the test, like, they can't find the test anymore. And so always look at, so one way to find it is to search by the name of the assessment, and then go into the administration and look at what is in this course and subject. Sometimes, even though you have selected, 7th grade math, it gets filed in, and y'all could all probably already tell me this, kindergarten ELA. So I don't know why. It is a bug. It is something we know happens. It self-admittedly needs to be fixed, but always double check that. So search for it and then make sure it's still on, whatever subject and grade level. So when you're looking at this general information on a test, just so you know, what you set as the subject right here, test type, and grade level determines where it's filed. The courses associated determines which learning standards you're selecting questions from. So that's kind of the difference there. So always make sure this is still like, 7th grade math instead of kindergarten ELA. I don't know why, sometimes randomly it will change, but it will, and then it will file the test under kindergarten, ELA over here. So that's good to check for when they're looking for their test, if they want to go in and edit it, or if they're looking for their data, because it can happen then too. And this can always be changed and it will just refile it in the correct place. Another thing that happens is if a teacher creates a test and converts it to a team test, the test is no longer available in their teacher file. It moves it to the team file. And so that happens too, where a teacher says, I created a test and, now it's not there, and it's actually just been moved to, the team file. So that's just another place to look and see if that's going on. If you are the Eduphorian, you probably need impersonation rights, because if a teacher creates a test, you cannot see the test unless it is converted to a team test, or that teacher has the campus administrator rights that allows them to create a local test. But if they down here click on create a new teacher test and create the test, they are literally the only one who can see it. And so when they need help troubleshooting, you have to log in as them to see it. And so that's why that impersonation right, becomes really important to have. So troubleshooting things on the test. The next thing is I can't find my course. And this is a big, big, big one. So what I'm talking about there is when they're doing their test, it's a campus level administrator, and they say, well, we know we assign tests to students in selected courses. That's always the best way to assign tests, so teachers can print their answer docs, and, it's assigned to the students in the online platform, all that stuff. We're going to go students in selected courses. But what if my course, this is a math test, but what if my math course isn't showing up here? Well, the short-term fix is they need to go down here to all, and that will pull up all classes on the campus, and then they can, find their course in the list of all. But the permanent fix is you need to go into management and course coding and make sure that course is actually coded to math. So when let's say your PEIMS person creates a new course, let's say you're going to offer pre-OP math this year and you've never offered it before, and it's a new course set up in PEIMS. That course will come in as a course on the campus through your nightly import, but it will not be coded to math unless you tell it to code it to math. So if you go into management and you go to the roster tab and you say set subject information, that's where you can go in and say, I want it, and the safest way is to pull it up by course number equals and then set it to, whatever subject here. And so anytime you have a course in this list like these that say NA, that means they've not been assigned a course, and so they're not going to show up under that course on the administration tab in Aware. So just kind of a heads up on that. The next thing is I can't edit my test. So that's another thing you'll get a lot of calls about. I can't edit my test. The test, I've moved it to pending and I still can't edit it. So when you're in an assessment, let's say the teachers build their assessment, they've shared it as a team test, you can now see it, and they want to go in and make changes to the assessment. So if I go into this assessment right here, and there it is. If I go into the assessment right here, there's two reasons why I would not be able to edit the test. Well, give it a second to pull up. There we go. As long as the little plus sign is blue, I know that the test is editable. I hate saying that word, editable. If the test has been moved to active, that's kind of the first thing to look. Notice they're grayed out. That means you can't edit the test. Or if anybody on the team or anybody who had access to the test generated their answer docs, even if the test is in pending state and there have been answer docs generated, you have to clear out or delete those answer sheets to be able to make the test editable again. So this is like a troubleshooting thing, first thing you want to check for. The way I know is I can click on this delete answer sheet and any answer sheets that have been generated will populate here. I'll check them and hit remove, and then I can edit my test again. Now, it doesn't mean I can't change an answer from A to B, or I can't change the SE that's assigned, none of those things. It would be anything that would affect the key. So anything that would make the key that you've generated not the same key that would match the test as it is now. So always check that. Again, they say, well, it's in pending, but my little plus signs are still grayed out and I can't edit it. Always go to that administration tab, hit the delete answer sheet. You can teach your teachers to do this too. They can do this as well. And delete any answer sheets that have been printed. They have this option too. And then once you do that, the test then becomes editable again. They may have to click on another test and then go back to it to kind of refresh it, but that's how you would get to your test.
Hey, Jenny.
Yes.
Hey, Jenny. I'm
Yes.
gonna pause because we are completely out of time.
I know, totally out of time. Okay.
And I'm sorry to everyone. We're not gonna be able to answer or go through the rest of her presentation here. We do want to cover. If you want to hand over to Paige, she's going to show some stuff. But we did cover a lot of information, and we know that.
Let me do one more. Hey, let me do one more thing. This was a request, and it's a quick one.
Okay.
And then we're done. Then we're done with Aware. We need to do this for Aware Loan. We got a question by email early on. Somebody said, how do I upload test files? And that's super, 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 super important to know how to do if you are the Eduphorian. And that's done under the Analyze tab. You have Upload Test Files right here. You're going to, just like one thing you need to look at is your file format. These are the ones that we've built importers for, and you can upload, data for. So that's important. But then it's literally as simple as attaching a attachment to email. I'm going to choose my file. It has to be in the format that was in that document right there, that I just showed you. And I'm going to say upload. And this is, she asked specifically about ISIP file. This would be an ISIP file. You can see it's pending. I'm just going to click upload again. It's pending. And then once it's done, it moves to the history tab right here. So if you're getting an error message saying, the file, it's not uploading correctly, let us know, because it could be a couple of things. One, you could be using the wrong file format, or it could be that the file, the download from whatever your ISIP, the file may be different than what our importer has now. And so that would be another reason, and we need to update our importer. And we don't know that unless you tell us. So anyway, I just want to go over that real quick, and then I'm done. Joel.
Jenny, will you just go over to the slides and drive, and I'm just going to go through the last ones from yours, and that would.
Perfect.
So we just wanted to talk really quickly about some of the things that we have coming up for training, because I know this was a lot of information and it was really fast. So you have some other options. You can request on-site training for your district if you have a team that needs to have some more specific targeted training that addresses your needs. You can also get some online training. We do webinars. So if you have a need for that, send an email to training@eduphoria.net and let us know what you're looking for, and we can get you a quote. We also have all kinds of on-demand information out there. Joel showed you the help section, and there are videos. We have a YouTube channel, tons of on-demand information that you can go out there and find. If Jenny will click to the next slide, we also have some events coming up that will give you some other opportunities for training. We have a roadshow that's traveling around Texas this semester, and we have several dates coming up. This is hands-on, in-depth training for only $50 per session. There are 2 sessions a day, 2 days in each roadshow event. So for a small amount of money, you can get some good deep level training, not just a show and tell like we're able to do in the webinars, but really hands-on specific training. So we have those dates coming up. If you want more information, email us, but you can always go to the website there at eduphoria.net/training-roadshow, find more information about each event and register there as well. In addition to that, we are still helping with the ESC events that are going on this year. We've got dates out there for all of the ones coming up. So if you're near one of those service centers, you can attend those events. Those are free, but they are not the in-depth hands-on type of training that you'll see at the roadshow. They're 45-minute sessions. They're more like the webinars where you are not hands-on, but they are a great opportunity to network and to get some ideas of things that you might want some more in-depth training on.
And I'll add, can I add to that too? It's also our training team does come to the ESC events, and it's like she said, it's not as in-depth in those sessions, but it's a good time to meet with us face to face. Some of them have a Genius bar, so it's usually staffed by trainers and ESC staff. So if you have questions or need troubleshooting, you can go there. Okay, go ahead.
And to me, I'm not going to spend time on reading this to you. My favorite part is that at the bottom. Could I benefit from attending both? Absolutely. They are different, but they both have great benefits. So the roadshow is more in-depth. You are going to get CPE credit for it. You are going to get some specific instruction hands-on, but the benefits of the user conference is going to be more on the networking side, getting ideas, and maybe being able to reach out to us during the Genius Bar times. And then our final slide is about our upcoming webinars. So you can always go to, I put a tiny URL out there, tiny URL, Eduphoria-webinars will take you to the page. You can always go into our help, and there's a box that says training and webinars, and you can find our upcoming webinars. But coming soon, we have Back to Basics Form Space, Back to Basics Facilities and Events, new stuff in Aware, which Jenny's going to show you some really cool things. And then we have our Trick or Treat one on Halloween, which is just a grab bag of Eduphoria tips and shortcuts. So lots of good information, especially for new Eduphorians, maybe some things that you don't know already. Thank you so much for your time today and for being patient with us through our time overage and our technical issues. We always appreciate y'all coming and giving your time to get some information during the webinars.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great afternoon.